If you've ever moved into a new apartment, you know the feeling. Everything is unfamiliar, every sound seems louder, every shadow feels out of place. Old buildings settle, pipes groan, neighbors make noise late at night. Most of the time, there's a perfectly reasonable explanation. But sometimes, the thing making those sounds isn't supposed to be there. Tonight's story is a fictional psychological horror tale inspired by urban legends, hidden room mysteries, and stories of people secretly living inside other people's homes. This is Tales of the Dark. 6 months ago, Daniel Carter buried his father, or at least, that's what everyone believed. The official report said the old apartment building had caught fire shortly after midnight. By the time firefighters managed to control the flames, the upper floor had completely collapsed. His father, Michael Carter, had been trapped inside. The fire had burned so intensely that investigators recovered only partial remains. DNA confirmed the identity. The case was closed. The funeral was held 3 weeks later. Daniel remembered almost none of it. He only remembered standing beside a wooden coffin, listening to people tell him how sorry they were. His father had raised him alone after Daniel's mother died when he was 6. They had never been rich, never owned a house. Just a small apartment on the south side of Chicago. It wasn't much, but every memory Daniel had lived inside those walls. After the funeral, he tried staying there, he really did, but every room reminded him of his father. The old recliner where they watched baseball together, the chipped coffee mug his father refused to throw away, the smell of sawdust drifting from the tiny workbench in the spare room where Michael spent weekends repairing old furniture. Every corner hurt. Eventually, Daniel admitted something to himself. He wasn't living anymore, he was surviving, so when he found an affordable apartment across the city, he took it without thinking twice. The building was called Ashcroft Apartments, 4 stories, built sometime in the 1940s, brick exterior, long narrow hallways, old hardwood floors. It had character, at least, that's how the landlord described it. You'll hear the pipes sometimes. The landlord chuckled while handing Daniel the keys, and the building creaks at night. It's almost 100 years old. Daniel smiled politely. I've lived in older. The landlord laughed. Then you'll fit right in. Apartment 4C sat at the very end of the top floor. There were no apartments above it, only an old maintenance attic that had supposedly been sealed decades earlier. One thing immediately caught Daniel's attention: a small square attic hatch. Directly above the hallway connecting the bedroom to the kitchen. He looked up. What's that? The landlord barely glanced at it. Old maintenance access. No reason anyone would ever open it. The hatch looked ancient. Its white paint had begun peeling around the edges. A thick metal latch kept it shut. Daniel nodded, then forgot about it. The first week passed quietly. He unpacked, started his new software engineering job, explored nearby coffee shops, met a few neighbors. One of them, an elderly woman named Mrs. Henderson, had lived in the building for over 30 years. As Daniel carried groceries upstairs one evening, she smiled warmly. You're in 4C? Daniel nodded. Just moved in. Her smile faded ever so slightly. You'll hear strange noises. Daniel laughed. The landlord already warned me. I'm used to old buildings. Mrs. Henderson looked toward the ceiling. Number, she whispered, not those noises. Before Daniel could ask what she meant, her apartment door closed. He stood there for a few seconds, then shrugged. Old buildings attracted strange people. That first Friday, Daniel finally slept well. No nightmares, no memories of the fire, no dreams about his father. At exactly 2:41 a.m., he woke to the sound of footsteps, slow, heavy, directly above his bedroom. He frowned. That didn't make sense. There wasn't another apartment upstairs, only the attic. The footsteps continued, 1, 2, 3, back and forth, almost as if someone were pacing. Daniel checked his phone. 2:41. He waited. The footsteps stopped. Silence returned. The next morning, he inspected the ceiling. Nothing, no stains, no cracks, nothing unusual. He convinced himself squirrels had somehow entered the attic. The The second night, the footsteps returned again, 2:41 a.m., exactly the same pace, exactly the same route, back, forth, back, forth. Daniel grabbed a broom, tapped the ceiling 3 times. The footsteps stopped immediately. He smiled. There you go, definitely an animal. He went back to sleep the following afternoon. He mentioned it to the building superintendent, probably raccoons. The man shrugged. I'll take a look next week. Daniel wasn't worried until Sunday morning. He reached into the pantry. His canned soup was gone. He searched every shelf. Nothing. Maybe he had forgotten eating it by Tuesday. An unopened loaf of bread had disappeared. Then bottled water, nothing expensive, just enough to make him question his own memory. He bought more groceries. 2 days later, another can vanished. That evening, Daniel called his younger sister. You ever forget buying groceries? She laughed. Already becoming an old man? Maybe, or maybe you're sleepwalking. Daniel laughed with her, but after hanging up. The apartment felt strangely quiet. He walked through every room. Everything appeared normal until he reached the hallway. The attic hatch was open only a few inches. He was certain it had been closed that morning. He dragged a chair underneath it, climbed up, pushed it open completely. Darkness greeted him. Cold air drifted down. He raised his phone flashlight. Wooden beams, dust, insulation, nothing else. Hello, no answer. He climbed down, locked the hatch, then placed a strip of clear tape across the edge. If anyone opened it, the tape would tear. Simple. The next morning, the tape remained untouched, but the footsteps returned again that night. 2:41 a.m., slow, deliberate, closer than before, as if whoever was walking had stopped directly above his bed. Daniel didn't sleep. Instead, he ordered a motion-activated security camera online. If someone really was entering the apartment, he wanted proof. The camera arrived the next afternoon. He installed it facing the hallway, directly toward the attic hatch before leaving for work the following morning. He checked the battery, full, storage card installed. Everything worked perfectly. When he returned home that evening, he couldn't wait to review the footage. Hours passed normally. The hallway remained empty. Then, 2:41 a.m., the screen filled with static, exactly 3 minutes of interference, nothing but grey distortion. When the picture returned, Daniel leaned closer. His heartbeat slowed. The attic hatch was hanging open. He watched in silence. No one climbed down, no shadow appeared, nothing moved. Then, very slowly, the hatch closed by itself. The recording ended. Daniel looked up from the laptop. The hatch above him was shut, exactly as it appeared in the video. His mouth went dry. Someone or something had been above his apartment, and whatever it was, it knew exactly where the camera was looking. Daniel couldn't stop staring at the ceiling. The apartment suddenly felt much smaller, much quieter. He replayed the footage again and again. Every time, the same thing happened, exactly at *2:41 am***. 3 minutes of static, then the attic hatch hanging open, then, slowly, it closing by itself. No shadow, no face, no explanation. He barely slept. The next morning, he took the footage straight to the building superintendent. The older man watched the recording twice. Finally, he sighed. The camera probably glitched. Daniel shook his head. So the hatch opened itself. The superintendent didn't answer. Instead, he grabbed a ladder. I'm checking the attic. Daniel followed him upstairs. The hatch creaked open. A flashlight beam swept across the darkness. Old wooden beams, thick insulation, spider webs, nothing else. The superintendent climbed inside. 10 minutes later, he climbed back down. Nobody's up there. What about footprints? Just dust. What about another entrance? There isn't one. He locked the hatch again. This building's older than both of us. It makes strange noises. Daniel wanted to believe him. He really did, until that evening. He came home from work. His apartment smelled like fresh coffee. He stopped in the doorway. His coffee maker sat on the kitchen counter, half full, steam still rising. Daniel never left it on. He hadn't even bought coffee yet. He slowly walked closer. His hands began shaking. The mug beside the machine was old white ceramic, one side chipped. His father had owned an identical mug. Daniel stared at it for nearly a minute. then convinced himself it was coincidence. It had to be that night. He installed a second camera. This one faced the living room. The next morning, both cameras showed exactly 3 minutes of static at exactly 2:41 a.m. When the recordings returned, something had changed. The blanket folded neatly across his couch, his shoes lined perfectly beside the front door, a loose cabinet hinge fixed. Daniel froze. There was only one person who always organized his apartment like that, his father. "Number," he whispered, "this isn't real." Over the next week, the impossible continued. A burnt-out light bulb replaced a leaking faucet, repaired his favorite jacket, washed and folded. Someone was living inside his apartment, but they never took anything valuable, never damaged anything. They only helped. Daniel finally contacted the police. 2 officers arrived that afternoon. They searched every room, every vent, every crawl space. Finally, one officer climbed into the attic. Minutes passed. Then, his voice echoed down, "I found something." Daniel climbed up behind him. Hidden beneath old insulation was a small living space. Blankets, empty soup cans, bottled water, a flashlight, a battery-powered radio. Someone had been living there for months. The officer frowned. "Looks like your squatter heard us coming." Daniel looked around, then noticed something lying beside the blankets. An old pocket watch. His heart nearly stopped. He slowly picked it up. The glass was cracked. The chain was broken. His initials, DC***, were engraved inside. His father had given him that watch on his 16th birthday. It had disappeared. The night of the fire, Daniel's hands trembled. Where did this come from? The officers exchanged confused looks. "You know it." Daniel couldn't answer that night. He couldn't leave the apartment. He sat beneath the attic hatch, waiting. His flashlight rested across his lap. His phone recorded. The apartment remained silent. 2:40 a.m. Nothing. 2:41. Footsteps directly above him. Slow, careful. The attic hatch rattled once. Daniel stood. His voice cracked. "I know you're up there." The footsteps stopped. "If you're hiding, I'm not calling the police." Silence. Daniel swallowed hard. "I just want answers." For nearly a minute, nothing happened. Then, the hatch slowly opened. A pair of worn work boots appeared, then trembling hands. A thin man climbed carefully down the ladder. Long grey beard. Burn scars covered the left side of his face. Old flannel shirt, faded jeans. Daniel couldn't breathe. The stranger slowly lifted his head. Tears filled both their eyes. "Dad," Michael Carter stared at his son. His voice barely escaped. "I'm sorry." Daniel stumbled backward. "Number," they said. "They buried you." Michael lowered his head. "I know. They believed I died. The fire. It wasn't an accident." Daniel's mind raced. "What are you talking about?" Michael sat heavily on the floor. "The building caught fire. I escaped, but someone was waiting outside." Daniel frowned. "What do you mean?" Michael looked toward the window before answering. "I couldn't go home. I couldn't go to the police. I couldn't let anyone know I survived, so I disappeared." Daniel stared at him in disbelief. "Why didn't you tell me?" Michael's eyes filled with tears. "I wanted to so many times, but if they knew I was alive, they'd come looking for you too." Daniel sat beside him. Months of grief, anger, confusion all collided at once. "You've been living above me," Michael nodded. "I heard you moved here. I found the building. I couldn't leave you alone. So every night, I checked on you. The food, I replaced it when I borrowed it. The coffee, I knew you hadn't been sleeping. The cabinet, you always ignored broken things." Daniel laughed through tears. "You fixed it." Michael smiled for the first time, just like always. For a few moments, everything felt normal again, like the nightmare had ended. Then, Michael's smile disappeared. His eyes slowly drifted upward toward the attic. Daniel noticed immediately. "What is it?" Michael didn't answer. Instead, he whispered, "I have to tell you something." Daniel waited. Michael looked terrified. "The footsteps." Daniel frowned. "What footsteps?" "The ones you hear every night. I thought they were yours." Daniel's face turned pale. "What?" Michael slowly shook his head. "No, I only climbed down after they stopped." Silence filled the apartment. Neither of them moved. Then, from above the attic, came 3 slow footsteps, heavy, deliberate. Walking across the old wooden beams, both men looked toward the ceiling. Michael's face lost all color, his voice trembled. "I wasn't hiding from you." A loud creak echoed overhead. "I was hiding." Another slow step from whatever. The attic hatch rattled violently. "It is still up there." Daniel slowly raised his flashlight. The hatch handle began turning by itself. Then 3 slow knocks echoed from the other side. Knock, knock, knock. The apartment fell silent. Neither Daniel nor his father ever opened the hatch again. The building was evacuated 2 weeks later after residents reported unexplained noises inside the ceiling. Maintenance workers searched every inch of the attic. They found Michael's small shelter, his blankets, his radio, his empty food cans. But there was one detail none of them could explain. Running through the thick layer of dust were 2 different sets of footprints. One belonged to Michael, the other, it was much larger, bare, and it didn't stop at the attic, it disappeared into the walls. No official report ever explained where those footprints ended. Today, apartment 4C still sits empty. The landlord tells prospective tenants it's being renovated, but every now and then, someone walking the top floor late at night claims they hear footsteps above the ceiling. Always at exactly 2:41 a.m., and if they stop to listen, 3 slow knocks answer back. If you are brave enough to hear more nightmares, subscribe to Tales of the Dark, and if you have your own terrifying experience, leave it in the comments or send your story by email. Maybe your nightmare will become the next story told here.